This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We begin tonight with more healthcare concerns in Bonavista. Last week, we told you about staffing issues at the ER, forcing residents to drive 90 minutes to reach the next available emergency room. But staffing is affecting other departments too, like Bonavista's dialysis unit. Residents fought to open the unit in the first place, and now one family fears if it keeps closing, the life of a loved one will be at risk. Here and Now's Daryl Roberts has more.
Peggy Phillips is worried about her brother-in-law.
The more pressure on him, the more stress is not good on him.
Art Reed, who lives in Bonavista, has already been through a lot. He had a heart attack, then open heart surgery.
He was in the hospital for a little over a year. He lost his 2 legs to his knees.
Now, Reed gets dialysis twice a week to help with kidney function. But lately, the dialysis unit at the Bonavista Health Center isn't always open. When it's closed, Reed has to make the 90-minute trip to and from the hospital in Clarenville in the back of an ambulance.
He has to leave like 10 in the morning. He don't get back to 8 and 9 in the night.
In a statement, Eastern Health says dialysis can go ahead if staff are available, but when coverage is unavailable, patients are diverted to Clarenville. Phillips says dialysis is already painful, and the drive makes things worse for her brother-in-law.
The day before he got to go to Glanville, he's really upset, like really depressed and knowing what he got to do, and he's uncomfortable on the ambulance. And after dialysis, you're sick anyway.
Some residents have taken to protesting outside the hospital each week. Gail Brown fought for years to bring dialysis to Bonavista.
We started up the dialysis committee back in 2010. Actually, this is when I got involved with healthcare. My mum was on it for 5.5 years. She went 208 times a year to Clarenville on ambulance. And now we were successful in getting the dialysis unit in 2015, and Mum passed away that year.
But now Brown is fighting again to keep the unit open.
You got to look at the people and what they're actually going through. This is how they're living. They need this service to live. And it's their choice, and they're fighting to live every day.
Phillips says her brother-in-law is known for his resilience and sense of humor, but the trips to Clarenville are taking a toll, and she's afraid Reed will deny the treatment and risk his life.
If he got to go to Clarenville, he's not going to. Man, he got the nerve enough to refuse it. He's after going through that much. I don't think he needs that stress on him.
Daryl Roberts, CBC News, Bonavista.
Well, people in Bonavista haven't been the only ones struggling with access to health care. The town of Whitburn has had ongoing closures of its emergency room, and on the weekend, protesters called for the immediate reinstatement of services. Here Now's Henrika Wilhelm has more.
24/7! 24/7! After months of suspension, they've had enough. About 200 protesters gathered yesterday across from the William H. Newhook Health Center in Whitburn to demand the return of 24-hour emergency services.
We're not going to stop until the government gets their head where it needs to be to get this place reopened. It can't stay closed. There's just too many lives that depend on this place.
To access emergency services, people now have to go elsewhere, like Placentia, Carbonear or St. John's, a drive of about 40 to 60 minutes away. It's a situation that worries local residents.
I have a little girl myself, and just knowing that I would have to travel so far if something happens to her, like it breaks my heart knowing that the care that was here is not here right now.
Why would you reduce something that keeps us alive? In an aging province, our most vulnerable population, how are they going to have the mindset to call 911, 811, 511, 411? Get rid of the numbers, because that's what we're becoming. We don't want to be a number.
Whitburn's ER services have been suspended temporarily since June 27th due to staff shortages. Yet week after week, the closure gets extended by Eastern Health. The ER serves about 20,000 area residents and also takes in those injured in highway accidents.
We've had helicopters land in with severe trauma. I know that's not something that happens all the time, but it's like any emergency. You don't know when it's going to happen, but you need to be prepared when it does happen.
Adding winter road conditions, offload delays, and a larger area that crews have to cover off due to province-wide staff shortages, Smith says it's not a good situation.
This past weekend alone, we've had to take our employees off for fatigue, leaving red alert. And, it's concerning because these are young people who have just got in the industry.
The protesters say they are prepared to take their fight to St. John's. On Friday, Eastern Health announced the ER will remain closed until at least March 6th. By then, the ER in Whitburn will have been closed continuously for 36 weeks. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, Whitburn.
Oh, we saw a nice break in the weather yesterday anyway, but here we go again. Another system moving in, already starting to see some snow on parts of the west coast. In behind that, lots of rain, which will move in as we head through the night tonight. You can already start to see that transitioning to rain on towards the west coast and along the south coast. Lots more where that came from. Environment Canada has a number of warnings in place. Let's start with an extreme cold warning up across Labrador. Yes, that cold air moving right back in and will be the story over the next couple of days. And then we've got wind warnings for the west coast all along the northeast coast, including down to the south and the Canaveral Peninsula, and then snowfall as well as rainfall warnings in place. We'll see that rain move in as we head through the night tonight. Right now, clear and nice, -1. These temperatures climbing to the single digits, mid-single digits as we head through the night tonight along with that rain. Clear your storm drains because there should be some pooling of water. I'll get into the full forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, a new registry will make it easier for doctors in the 4 Atlantic provinces to travel for work within the region. The database will eliminate the need for additional licensing to work in another province. The 4 premiers met in Prince Edward Island today as part of their regular get-togethers. They talked about issues such as immigration and housing, but the biggest topic was healthcare. Premier Andrew Furey says the Atlantic Physicians Registry should be in place by May, and it will allow doctors to move around the region much easier.
What this will do is allow physicians in each province to, as they're filling out their annual college renewal, to opt into an Atlantic licensure. So people who would like to move around in the summertime, for example, PEI is a beautiful place and want to come and spend a couple of weeks with their family, they could certainly do that. Equally, as someone who's now trying to secure medical services from the province's perspective, it will open up the pool of people who are available for certain gaps in the system.
Well, public hearings are on hold for the inquiry that's looking into how the child protection system handled and treated Innu children. There's been a sudden death in Sheshatshiu, and inquiry officials say they're giving the community time to grieve. New hearing dates will be announced later this week. As for the video recordings of the proceedings so far, they should be available on the inquiry's website within the coming days. Well, now to the Northeast Avalon, where all bus routes were in operation this morning. It's the first time since the English School District suspended one busing company, Gladney's, 9 days ago. The board said safety concerns prompted the action. Some of Gladney's buses have since been inspected and approved for use, according to the district, but they're being operated by another contractor. Well, the RNC made an arrest over the weekend in relation to a murder investigation in St. John's. Robert Belbin was charged with second-degree murder in relation to the death of a 22-year-old man on Mayor Avenue earlier this month. The 21-year-old was previously arrested last May and charged with aggravated assault and robbery in connection with a string of shootings and a stabbing in downtown St. John's. Police say he was located in the west end of the city on Friday evening and arrested without incident. Well, now to the west coast. Post-tropical storm Fiona caused widespread damage in Port aux Basques last fall. A local woman who lost her house says it's been 5 long months and she's still waiting to receive government money. Peggy Savory and her partner had retired and moved home from Ontario 4 years ago. Their home was destroyed in the disaster and they lost all of their belongings. Savory says it's hard living in limbo with no idea about when they can start to move forward and rebuild their lives. The province announced a $30 million fund in the days after the September disaster, and the federal government announced $300 million for a recovery in the Atlantic region to help people rebuild their homes and their lives. But Savory says she, like many other Fiona victims, have yet to see any financial assistance.
This is not new. It's happened in Badger, it's happened in Stevensville, and I think they should have learned from those experiences so that, you know, when they have a disaster happening, they should be a little more prepared. To me, this seems a little chaotic and not organized, and I'm a little frustrated at the lack of communication, and that we're 5 months in, and some of us have heard things and some of us haven't, and there's been no communication to those who haven't. So I'm really disappointed and frustrated at them, because especially like Trudeau was at my where I worked. He showed up at my workplace because there was 4 of us there that lost our homes, and he said he was going to look after us and not to worry, as did Andrew Fury. And you know, I don't know what they mean by looking after us, but 5 months later, and I'm in the same position I was the day my house went down. So it is frustrating and disappointing that they can't move a little faster.
Well, now taking a quick look at sports, a soccer player from Labrador has signed on to play in the Canadian Professional League. Daniel Nimick will play with the Halifax Wanderers in the upcoming 2023 CPL season. Nimick was born in Happy Valley Goose Bay and raised in England. He spent his youth with Leeds Academy and played professionally with Harrogate Town before joining the team at Western Michigan University. The 2023 CPL season starts in April.
There was a change in management. With that came a change in priority.
A retired Royal Newfoundland Constabulary officer is speaking out after the force quietly shelved its equine therapy program. The CBC Investigates story is next.
Well, we got a healthy dose of freezing rain over the weekend. This time, lots of plain rain, 2 to 5 degrees as we head through the overnight tonight. I'll break it all down for you coming up.
We've been bringing you special coverage because it's Black History Month, and of course the past is very important, but there are problems in the present that need to be discussed.
The system was built by you, for you, to preserve you.
You got the blinders on and you're doing your thing and you don't think you're causing harm.
Coming up, difficult discussion about race.
A retired Royal Newfoundland Constabulary officer is going public over her concerns about how police leadership is addressing the issue of mental health. Constable Kelsey Muse left the force last summer. She says she had little choice. Muse says the RNC quietly shelved its equine therapy program, effectively pushing her out too. And she says it started when there was a change at the top. Now a national nonprofit says the RNC has taken a step backward in its journey towards mental wellness for its members. Here Now's Ariana Kellant has that story.
Horses are prey animals, and so they are always on alert, and so they are very in tune with their surroundings. They feed off our emotions, and so they can kind of be a mirror to what we feel, even if we don't really know what we feel.
Kelsey Muse knows the power of animals. The constable says these police horses helped her with her post-traumatic stress disorder, an injury from the job. So when the former chief offered her the chance to run an equine therapy program, she was more than happy to extend that help to her fellow officers and the community.
Once or twice a week we were running these programs down at government grounds, and it was very successful. It was breaking down this stigma and creating this partnership between the police and this vulnerable population.
Chief Boland and the team from the RNC Mounted Unit, welcome to your new home.
The program grew. The RNC moved its horses to Rainbow Riders, a bigger, healthier space for the animals, and partnered with the Canadian nonprofit HELP, or the Heroes Equine Learning Program, to offer retreats to first responders and military members with occupational stress injuries.
They were so successful, and they were starting to get momentum. We had 4 in 1 year when we started putting them off, and then they just got canceled. There was a change in management, and with that came a change in priority.
No secret that
Joe Boland retired as chief of the RNC in the summer of 2021. Patrick Roach came out of retirement to become interim chief that same summer, and days later showed support for that same work when these 2 Newfoundland ponies were added to the mix.
The RNC Mounted Unit to continue providing support through equine therapy to our members, to first responders, to 911 call takers, and members of the community. This is an incredible step forward in our recognition and the removal of the stigma of mental health issues.
Now, more than a year later, we found one of those therapy ponies here, returned to its original barn in the Ghouls.
They pretty much did nothing for the whole year that they were with the RNC.
Muse says she was left with little to do too, as she says doing her job became increasingly difficult. She says she was stopped from arranging community programming herself, and those mental health retreats, well, they stopped too. The program effectively shut down.
I was really defeated, very hurt, but also extremely frustrated because, again, these programs were proven to work.
It was a shock to us, seeing that, is it about money? Is it about the program? What is it about? There was no conversation about it.
Ryan Theriault is co-founder of the Heroes Equine Learning Program. He says getting buy-in from Canadian police organizations is hard. There seems to be a denial amongst leadership and a resistance to external help. Theriault says partnering with the RNC was a step in the right direction.
I thought that we had a great relationship. I think it was a great rapport to be able to open that to a police force and to see it kind of shut down with no explanation, no openness, no conversation about it. I feel that it's kind of going backwards.
So this is Dr. Rich?
Yes, that's him. This is the gentle giant.
The biggest hurt, Muse says, was not the loss of the career, but the loss of a partner. She says after she went on sick leave last February, she visited Dr. Rich, until one day he wasn't there. The RNC retired Dr. Rich to PEI because of health issues.
At that point in time, I was quite sure that I probably wasn't going to return to the RNC. A lot of damage had been done. This was the biggest knife to my back.
That they didn't tell you?
Yes. They didn't allow me the opportunity to say goodbye. They didn't allow me the opportunity to even know what was going on with him.
After 2 decades as an officer, Muse retired in September at the age of 39. Her career is over, but she worries for those who are still on the job.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that people are going to start taking their lives around here. And the help and the support is not there.
Chief Patrick Roach declined an interview with CBC News. Our list of questions went unanswered to the RNC. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
This weather forecast has been brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. Whatever you're up for this winter, discover experience packages at winterupnl.ca.
Okay, time for a look at the weather, and it was lovely yesterday, but things are going to be changing yet again.
Yeah, you always have to get out when it's sunny and some nice
Soak
weather
it in.
to enjoy. Yeah, because it's been one after another, and unfortunately, same thing again as we head through the night tonight. So let's take a look at where we sat today. Milder into the minus single digits for St. John's, -1, and then 2 or 3 degrees as you head towards the coast. That's because some warmer air is moving in, and that is going to continue to head east as we head through the night tonight. Up across Labrador, temperatures mild yet again, 0, 1, +1, in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and temperatures across the western Labrador anyway into the minus single digits earlier this afternoon, but that temperature has since dropped like a rock for Lab City down to -15, with those winds switching from southerlies, which is why you're seeing some of that moderately milder weather, to northwesterlies, ushering in all of that cold air. So that will be the story as we head through the night tonight. Just take a look at the current wind chills out there, feeling more like -25 in Lab City right now, and those temperatures are now up to about 2 or 3 degrees. Like I said, so far those are the daytime highs, but they're going to continue to climb as we head through the night tonight. Lab City, Churchill Falls, and the Valley under an extreme cold warning. You're looking at your wind chills dipping into the -40s as we head through the night tonight. And we've got lots of weather across the island. Lots of wind warnings from essentially Gross Moor down to the south coast, southwest coast, including the Wreck House area. And then along the northeast coast, including the Avalon and through the Canagar Peninsula, that is a wind warning. We're looking at some pretty significant winds as we head through tonight. Snowfall warnings also in place in those higher elevations towards the coast. Otherwise, rainfall warnings pretty much extending right east across the island, and we'll see that move in as we head through the night tonight. Now, as far as those temperatures are concerned up across Labrador, like I said, those extreme cold warnings in place, but we're going to see lots of cold air. There's plenty more where that came through this week, so we'll say goodbye to some of that milder air, and that cold air is actually going to sink further south as well as we head through the week. So expecting those wind chills and temperatures dipping through the overnight periods into the minus double digits. Some of us may even see those temperatures dipping into the -20s as we head through the weekend. That will really continue as we head into Sunday. Temperatures tonight up across Labrador, -34 in Lab City, like I said, otherwise -teens the story, and then a mild night expected across the island as those winds pick up. So let's talk a little bit about that. Right now we've got lots of rain across the maritime provinces. That's starting to edge its way north. Started as snow for a good chunk of the west coast, especially in those higher elevations, but down towards the coast and some of those lower lying areas, starting to see that transition to rain. Now this snow is going to work its way a little bit further east as we head through the night tonight. Not going to accumulate too much, a trace maybe 2 centimeters at the most it looks like, but it will transition through to rain fairly quickly, and that's because we're going to start to see those temperatures move in. 2 to 5, 6 degrees as we head through the overnight through central. You'll start to see some of that heavier rain as we get past midnight. And then all along the strait, really northern peninsula, higher elevations, you're looking at that snow continuing through a good chunk of the night till your temperatures start to climb. And then eastern Newfoundland, those temperatures are going to start to warm up, and we'll see that rain move in the early morning hours. That will move through and continue through a good chunk of the afternoon tomorrow. And then otherwise, some colder air going to move right back in. So as far as snowfall amounts go, we're looking at the highest elevation seeing the most. We're pretty much said and done with the snow now, maybe at 2 to 5 centimeters more. But other than that, all along the strait is where we'll see the majority, another 15 centimeters certainly possible. But it's rainfall amounts that are fairly significant. Along the south coast, 50 to 75 millimeters possible. And then for the Avalon, where we've seen lots of snow and still have lots of snow on the ground, we could see somewhere between 20 to 30 millimeters. So if you have not cleared your storm drains, you're certainly going to want to, because we will see significant runoff and significant snow melt with this. Talking about winds gusting between 80 to 100 kilometers per hour. They'll peak in the early morning hours on Tuesday, and then eventually we will see those winds ease. So taking a look at the forecast for tomorrow, 6 degrees to start. They will drop as the day goes on. The west coast a bit cooler than that. And then for Labrador, into the minus 20s, minus 21 in Lab City tomorrow. And again, this will be a stretch of cold air to go. So we'll talk about the long range forecast in a little bit.
Excellent. Thanks, Ashley. And stay with us. In the next half hour of the show, we'll be welcoming viewers from across the Maritimes as our CBC colleagues there celebrate the Family Day holiday. We'll have more local news and weather, as well as stories from New Brunswick and Nova Scotia.
And we'll bring you to PEI for more Canada Games coverage.
This is CBC Here and Now. This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes in St. John's. I'd like to welcome our viewers in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick who are joining us on their holiday Monday. For the next 30 minutes, we'll be an Atlantic-wide show with local newscasts returning to normal tomorrow. So we begin with today's Premier's meeting on Prince Edward Island and news that doctors in Atlantic Canada will soon be able to work in any of the 4 provinces. All 4 premiers are on PEI for the Canada Games. Today's meeting largely focused on health care and the agreement to create something called the Atlantic Physician Registry. It's expected to launch on May 1st with the goal of removing the challenges that stop doctors from practicing in multiple provinces, particularly for doctors filling in for short periods of time.
It can't be lost, and I mean, nobody knows this better than Dr. Fury, that there's not enough professionals within the system to recruit, and that's where we all struggle.
For example, there's not an emergency room physician available for Norris Point. Well, right now in Newfoundland and Labrador, we'd be limited to the Newfoundland and Labrador College, but it could open up to the rest of the Atlantic region. It's certainly not something that's going to fix the problem, but it gives us more Band-Aids, if you will, to help plug some immediate issues along the way while we are developing a moderate and modern system for the future.
Now, the premiers also discussed recent healthcare meetings in Ottawa, immigration, housing, and the lack of air transportation around the Atlantic region post-COVID, particularly to and from Newfoundland and Labrador. Premier Andrew Furey says he's open to exploring what alternatives local carriers may be able to offer.
Certainly paying attention to the national carriers and how they're changing their scope, if you will, and certainly as it impacts this region. And we're looking at creative ways to work together to ensure this region is protected with respect to air travel.
Staying on Prince Edward Island, that province is host to one of its biggest events ever. Thousands of visitors have arrived for the Canada Games.
All I do is win, no matter what.
Well, they don't usually see this much activity in the middle of February. Hotels on the island are full, restaurants are busy, rinks and recreational facilities are packed. This week is all about celebrating amateur athletes, seeing young people having fun while competing in the top level of their sports. Well, the Canada Games are about more than just sports. It's a time to show off PEI itself. And there are events and festivals highlighting the province's culture in many communities. Sheehan Desjardins has that story.
You can feel the excitement right behind me here. Around 1,800 athletes, coaches, and managers are getting ready to march out, marking the official start to the 2023 Canada Winter Games. From BC to Newfoundland, the territories, and everywhere in between. Some of the country's top amateur athletes are here to compete. After years of work, Canada Games organizers are eager to welcome them.
It was electrifying in here. It was just so energizing, and the athletes were on the floor. They were clapping, they were dancing. It was just so exciting.
For some athletes, this is the ultimate goal.
I'm excited for Canada Winter Games.
For others, it's a step along the way to a different dream.
I was very excited. I was like, oh, finally, hard work has paid off. It's gonna be crazy. There's gonna be a lot of people there, and I think it's gonna be awesome.
There was singing, dancing, even some inspired younger athletes.
I definitely want to do this. Very fun, a bunch of lights and music and a bunch of fun stuff.
At opening ceremony, organizers say it's not about the fancy lights or production that make this moment so memorable. It's the fact that after years of restrictions and staying apart here in PEI, so many different parts of the country are finally back together to celebrate what makes sports so special. Sheehan Desjardins, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Well, now to Nova Scotia. Longtime CBC TV host Jim Nunn died yesterday in Antigonish. Nunn's career with the CBC spanned 30 years. He hosted shows like Land and Sea and Marketplace before returning to Nova Scotia News at 6 until his retirement in 2009. Today, colleagues are remembering him for his keen eye for news and no-nonsense interviewing style. Nunn died of cancer. He was 72. Well, the late Rita Joe is being honored in Nova Scotia as part of Heritage Day. The renowned poet was one of the first people to write about the horrors of the residential school system. There's also a movement underway to give the Cape Breton poet and other prominent Indigenous women a more permanent place in Canadian history. The CBC's Erin Potty reports.
To view mother in a long box.
Rita Joe was born in Cape Breton's Waikagama First Nation in 1932. She wrote powerful poetry regarding the history of residential schools and about the identity of the Mi'kmaq. Her daughter says Rita gave her people a voice.
She first started writing a column for the Mi'kmaq News, and then she started writing poetry, and she started doing recording. She would go to the elders and record legends and stories, and it was like she was trying to spotlight our culture and uplift our culture.
Joe attended Shubenacadie Residential School. When she began writing, it was just a decade after the 60s scoop and residential schools were still operating.
When she first started back in the 70s, there wasn't much positive representation of us out there. You know, we were getting killed on TV on the westerns, and they were still dealing with the fallout of residential school too. It was kind of a sad time.
The next generation is doing their part to bring more attention to Rita Joe. Alex Beals hopes one day people will carry a piece of Mi'kmaq history in their wallets. The Truro-raised Indigenous artist has designed a $20 bill featuring Rita Joe along with floral Mi'kmaq beadwork in the background.
I would just be happy, I guess. I think everyone would be very, very excited and feel like they made a change in the world.
Beals and other artists have put their own heroes on Canadian banknotes as part of a project known as Change the Bill by the Native Women's Association of Canada. The call to action shows what money could look like if Indigenous women were represented fairly in mainstream media.
Meet me halfway. I am today's Indian.
Joe's daughter says highlighting Mi'kmaq culture was her mother's passion.
One of the things my mother used to say was, she used to say, I wanted to lift up the sad eyes of my people. And I wanted to show them that their culture is beautiful.
Which was her life's work. Throughout her career, Rita Joe wrote 7 books, including Poems of Rita Joe and Song of Eskazoni. In 1989, she was named to the Order of Canada and later the Queen's Privy Council. Rita Joe was also granted several honorary degrees before her death in 2007. Although Joe's family would love to see their mother and grandmother featured on a Canadian bill, they are already pleased with the level of recognition sent her way. Erin Potty, CBC News, Sydney.
Well, let's go to New Brunswick now, where one man is celebrating the completion of an epic pandemic project. In the 2020 lockdown, Stephen Lord was looking for a unique cottage idea, and he certainly found it. He's settled on a repurposed grain silo. He took us inside for a tour.
Hi, my name is Stephen Lord, and I'll take you around for a quick tour of my small cottage I built out of a grain silo. Go. So this is just like a small porch we built, so outside. So in the summertime, most of our nights we're going to be sitting in here or at the bonfire. So it's all screened up to stay away from bugs, but actually we don't have bugs, so it's a good thing. Let's go inside. Now this is the inside. So the inside, as I mentioned, it's not really big. It's not a big place, but a house, we already had one, so we wanted to build something different out of a grain silo. We have a wood stove that we use just to heat up when we're around. When we're not around, we got the heat pump. Nice and cozy. Cupboards were quite a big project to build because we had to build something round. And something round, you can't buy anything really round. So I got a small sawmill in the area that found a piece of wood that was the perfect shape for it. So I did the top of the counter, and then I built some covers in the front. And for horseshoes, I used some horseshoes to do my handles, so it would be something different. Now, from the upstairs, same thing, we had to build a railing, so I took a railing, built it out of cement rods, so steel rods for the cement flooring, so I built my stairway all myself. I always liked those drop lights, so I ordered them drop lights, and same thing, I wanted a cozy look, so I put on a lot of lighting, but everything's on the dimmer, so you bring them down and it makes it a nice and cozy area. We have the bedroom. Everything has to be like compact, so I bought a bed with drawers at the bottom, so that way we can put our clothing in there. The only thing I could say, if you have a dream, just go for it, because this was my dream, and I went for it, and I'm proud of having it now. So if you have a dream, go for it.
It's been a pretty rainy day across most of Atlantic Canada. That is headed towards Newfoundland and Labrador as we head through the night tonight. We'll break the long-range forecast down for you coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. VIP prize deadline is midnight March 10th. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Time for a look at the long range, and actually normally we just focus on Newfoundland and Labrador for the forecast, but tonight is different because of Family Day in Atlantic Canada and the Maritimes. Folks in those provinces are tuning in here tonight. So how was their Family Day today?
It was mild. Temperatures, I know it has been mild for a couple of days, but it's been a little bit wet as well. And that's exactly the weather that is headed here as we head through the night. Let's take a look at the temperatures across Atlantic Canada into the single digits. 8 degrees in Halifax today. That's your current temperature anyway. Sydney at 6 degrees. Fredericton, you're sitting around 5. And then we've got those milder temperatures, at least because it's been fairly chilly towards the west coast at the moment. 3 degrees in Corner Brook and St. John's. We're sitting at -1. Now taking a look at the current satellite and radar, all of that rain, I saw some pooling on the road, certainly in parts of Nova Scotia. And all of that rain now is headed towards Newfoundland and Labrador. We will eventually see this end across the Maritime provinces as we head through the overnight tonight. We've got some snow still up across Labrador, but we're going to see a big ridge of high pressure move in, and that's going to keep things quiet as we head through the day on Tuesday. But by Wednesday, a little trough moving through may spark some flurries across New Brunswick and maybe even western half of Nova Scotia. But that will move through fairly quickly. Shouldn't amount to much, but we will see some onshore flurries across the west coast of Newfoundland as we head through Thursday morning. And we could see that towards the northern peninsula and northeastern Newfoundland as we head through the day as well. Now, another system will move through Friday. At this point, not looking too significant across New Brunswick, PEI, and even Nova Scotia. We may pick up a couple centimeters, but this area of low pressure just scraping. It looks like Newfoundland and Labrador as we head into Saturday. We may see a bit of wind with this one and maybe a few flurries, but the majority of the weather should stay well offshore as we head through the afternoon on Saturday. And then it's going to head further north, but it looks like we should be in the clear across the island. So that's good news there. As far as your forecast is concerned, as we look across Atlantic Canada, temperatures staying above zero for the most part, but cooling down as we head across Newfoundland and especially up across Labrador, -18 in Lab City. And then as we head into Thursday, then we start to see that drop in temperatures, hence that potential for some flurries across Nova Scotia and parts of New Brunswick. But for the most part, temperatures will be sitting somewhere between -5 and -11. Cool air, the story across the island as well. And Labrador, you're looking at your temperatures in the -20s. Now the long range forecast takes us through to in and around -10 by the time we get into Friday and Saturday. The potential for flurries for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland will be there as well. And look at the overnight lows dipping into the -teens. So certainly some cooler air moving in. We'll see that through central and western Newfoundland as well. A few flurries certainly possible for central Newfoundland, and then same thing for the west. Then as far as Labrador is concerned, your temperatures will be sitting in the -20s, but lots of sunshine. Beautiful stretch of weather expected, but overnight lows are going to dip into the -30s. I wanted to share this photo with you tonight. This is a beautiful sunset in Conception Bay. Thank you for sharing that with us. And if you have any weather photos, send them to Facebook, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Returning now to the Canada Games. For the first time this year, athletes are competing in karate. More than 100 spectators watched the first rounds of competition this morning. The CBC's Tony Davis was there.
Karate fought its way into the Canada Games for the first time this year and kicked off today with kata for both men and women. It's a series of detailed patterns of martial arts movements where athletes are judged on their form and posture. This is 16-year-old Josh Beer-Roy's first time competing at a national level. He placed 4th in the first round.
It's awesome. I've been preparing for this for a year now, ever since I've known that it's going to happen. And it's truly a wonder to be here at this moment, being in what I've been preparing for. So it's awesome. Seeing all of Canada in my home province is awesome. Seeing that they're enjoying it alongside me. It's a great experience.
This PEI coach says he's been advocating for the sport to be added to the Canada Games for 3 years. Now he has high hopes for the 5 PEI athletes he helped train.
I know they're going to do very well. They've been practicing, they've been training. I know they're going to give their best performance possible, and whatever happens, it'll be up to the judges at that point. Just getting to see the other provinces, other coaches, other athletes, and just seeing the sportsmanship, the camaraderie, it's really quite overwhelming.
Roy was the only island athlete competing today, but his teammates were cheering him on from the stands and are preparing themselves for when it's their turn later this week.
I think it will give me a lot of confidence even if I don't do the best, and it'll also help me gain traction at other tournaments in the future, like nationals maybe.
Karate continues through the week with Kumite next on the schedule. That's where athletes spar against one another to score points. Members of Team PEI hope now the sport is part of the games, it will get others thinking about trying karate. Tony Davis, CBC News, Summerside.
Well, it's a unique stamina testing fundraiser. Run up 18 flights of stairs in a Halifax high-rise. Colleen Jones brings us that story from Nova Scotia.
Yes, there were regular people taking part in Stair Heroes, and we all quickly found out that climbing 18 flights of stairs or 36 levels is not an easy task.
Getting tired? Yeah.
Now imagine doing it weighed down by firefighting gear. Firefighters from every corner of Nova Scotia are taking part in this fundraiser for the Lung Association. That gear is heavy. I'm trying on Corey King's oxygen tank.
It is a lot, isn't it?
And this is only part of what they'll wear.
65 pounds. 65 pounds? How hard is this going to be? It's going to be hard, but it'll be worth it.
As they warm up, Eugene McGee is a 28-year veteran with Cape Breton Regional Fire Department. Like almost all the other firefighters, he's done this for real.
We've had a high-rise fire before and have done X number of, I think it was 20 flights at Vista Heights.
Yeah, that's true.
But I did that twice, actually.
It's just bragging rights on the line today. And so, with between 65 to 70 pounds of gear on, they are off, using the fire exits they know so well.
One more.
The Lung Association of Nova Scotia and PEI had just started their Stair Heroes fundraiser when COVID-19 hit.
3 weeks before COVID broke, and we lost that momentum. But we put a lot of work and effort into the last couple months, and we've surpassed 2020's totals from a registration perspective, as well as dollar perspective.
The event raised over $50,000 that goes into their programming and research into lung disease. As Eugene McGee makes his way to the top, he says the buy-in from fire departments is a natural. For many in this line of work, lung health can be an issue.
A lot of firefighting involves, getting contaminants in the respiratory system. So.
Not just an awareness campaign for lung health, but the fitness level it takes to be a firefighter was on full display. Colleen Jones, CBC News, Halifax.
U.S. President Joe Biden paid a surprise visit to Ukraine 4 days before the first anniversary of the Russian invasion. In a highly symbolic move, he walked through the streets of the capital with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky as air raid sirens wailed.
We mourn alongside the families of those who've been lost to the brutal and unjust war. We know that there'll be very difficult days and weeks and years ahead. But Russia's aim was to wipe Ukraine off the map. Putin's war of conquest is failing.
Biden has earned a plaque in Ukraine's Alley of Courage for rallying international support for the war-torn country. He's pledged another $500 million in military aid, adding to the $30 billion already promised. He spent several hours in Kyiv before traveling to Poland.
And starting tonight, the National will be hosted by Adrian Arsenault from within Ukraine for the full week.
Yes, and that about does it for us at Here and Now. Once again, thanks so much to our viewers in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia for joining us in this last half hour. Hopefully you had a nice family day, and your regular newscasts will return tomorrow. Good night.
Good night.